Well, hello again, and welcome to another edition of Weird News and Wacky History. A look behind the scenes of what's been happening throughout the years. I'm your host, Pastor Roland Moss, that old history dude. Sometimes after you're dead, it's hard to stay put, as we'll discover today in Postmortem Travels. Abraham Lincoln was interred in Springfield, Illinois' Oak Ridge Cemetery Public Receiving Vault on May 4, 1865. Then he started to travel. He was moved December 21st to a temporary receiving vault, the casket opened, and his remains verified. On September the 19th, 1871, it was off to the partially completed Lincoln tomb and another ID. October 9th, 1874, saw the transfer to a lead-lined cedar coffin and being put in a marble sarcophagus. Then attempts to steal his body on November 7th, 1876, led to several moves, being hidden under a woodpile in a basement for 2 years, then reburied in a nearby shallow grave. Following threats that his body had vanished, up he came again on November 21st, 1878, just to make sure he was still there. On April the 14th, 1887, ID'd again, he was interred in a new brick vault. March 10th, 1900, saw him move to an underground vault, then to a sarcophagus in the Lincoln tomb on April the 24th, 1901, followed by another move on July the 10th, 1901, to an empty crypt in the Lincoln tomb. Lincoln's body was disinterred on September 26, 1901, seen by 23 people, then enclosed in a steel cage and sealed under tons of concrete. Finally, Lincoln came to rest in peace. Haydn wasn't so bad, he only lost his head. Esteemed composer Franz Joseph Haydn died in Vienna in 1809 at age 77. Buried in a local cemetery, he rested in peace for exactly 8 days. Dug up in the dark of night, his moldering head was carted away to study, since phrenology, thinking shape and size of the skull were linked to genius, was at its height. For 11 years, Haydn lay headless. Then his longtime friend, Prince Esterhazy, decided to reinter Haydn with proper pomp and circumstances at his family estate. Shocked by the headless body, a massive search was launched for the head, now residing in a custom-made wooden box with windows. The thieves finally handed over a skull, but not Haydn's actual cranium. The real skull was gifted instead to a Vienna Music Institute in 1895. They refused to return it and even brought it out for show and tell from time to time. Burgenland, where the Esterházys still lived, finally fell under Russian control following World War II. Before pulling out in 1955, the Soviet commander ordered Haydn's wandering head returned. At last, Haydn was all together again. But what about the other skull? In a stunning marble tomb now lies the great composer, complete with 2 heads, one his and one not. Then there's Einstein, who kept his head but lost his brain. Nobel Prize winner Albert Einstein was an immensely intelligent man and dreaded the thought of his brain and body being studied. He left very specific instructions that he be cremated and his ashes scattered. And that's what happened. Sorta. His ashes were scattered except for his brain, which Princeton hospital pathologist Thomas Harvey made off with. When the physicist's son Hans found out a few days later, Dr. Harvey solemnly promised that any investigation of tissue would be purely in the interest of science. Yeah, right. Harvey lost his position at Princeton and his marriage over his weird obsession with Einstein's brain, but as he traveled from private practice to leading research labs, Einstein's dura mater went with him. At one point, the remains of the brilliant scientist were housed in a cider box sitting under a beer cooler. A 1978 article on Einstein's brain brought a flood of requests from researchers for a wedge of brain to study, so Harvey started slicing and dicing Einstein's cranial contents like a wheel of cheese, mailing out samples willy-nilly. What's left is housed at Penn Medicine Princeton Medical Center in Plainsboro, New Jersey, but it's off-limits to visitors. However, there are plenty of pieces of Albert still out there, wandering around America. Then there's movie great John Barrymore, who just went visiting. Many tend to think of Hollywood's early days as innocent and carefree. Instead, studio bosses had dictatorial control, stars did their own life-threatening stunts, and dead actors went to visit friends. Well, at least John Barrymore did. Barrymore ran with a fast crowd of hard-living pranksters known as the Bundy Drive Boys after the address where they all hung out. They included Barrymore, actor Errol Flynn, comic W.C. Fields, director Raoul Walsh, and other Hollywood old-timers. Hard drinking finally took its toll on Barrymore. He collapsed on May 19, 1942, dying at the age of 60. But the Bundy Drive Boys wanted one last night out with their buddy. Errol Flynn tells in his 1959 autobiography how the rest of the Bundy Drive boys borrowed Barrymore's body from the morgue, sat him in his favorite chair in Flynn's house, and then waited for the star to return home. Aghast at the reappearance of his dead pal, Flynn ran screaming into the night where the laughing jokesters intercepted him. Raoul Walsh told the same story in the 70s. Despite skeptical doubters, granddaughter Drew Barrymore confirms the rumor in an August of 2020 YouTube episode of Hot Ones. "I hope my friends do the same for me," she said with a smile. And that's about all the time we have for this episode of Weird News and Wacky History, a look behind the scenes of what's been happening throughout the years. I'm your host, Pastor Roland Moss, author, historian, and speaker, hoping that all of your history may be just a bit weird.